I didn't touch it at first. I just stood there, staring at it on the floor, because my hands had started shaking and I didn't know why. The room was quiet in a way that felt wrong. Not peaceful. Just empty. Like the sound had been drained out of the air. I remember thinking I should hear something, the fridge humming, the pipes, my own breathing, but it was like my body was louder than the house. That was when I noticed the smell. It wasn't strong, just old, like dust and something sour underneath it. And the thing was, I knew that smell didn't belong in my apartment. I hadn't brought anything new inside. This happened about 2 years ago. Back when I was living alone for the first time. Small apartment. Second floor. Old building, but well kept. The kind of place where the floors creak and the walls feel thin, but nothing ever actually goes wrong. I worked late shifts back then. Most nights, I'd come home after midnight, heat something up, scroll on my phone, then fall asleep on the couch with the TV still on. It wasn't glamorous, but it was predictable. And predictable felt safe. That week had been especially uneventful. No visitors. No deliveries. No surprises. I remember that clearly because I'd been trying to save money. I wasn't buying anything unnecessary. I hadn't even ordered takeout. The only thing that stood out was a message from my aunt earlier that day. She'd been cleaning out my grandmother's house and asked if I wanted anything before it all went to storage. I told her no. I loved my grandmother, but her house had always made me uneasy. Everything in it felt heavy. Not haunted, it just crowded with history. Too many objects that had lived longer than the people who owned them. My aunt said okay. End of conversation. Or so I thought. I noticed the object when I came home that night. At first, I assumed I was just tired. I'd kicked my shoes off by the door like always, tossed my keys onto the counter, and walked toward the living room. That's when I saw it. A small wooden box, rectangular, dark, worn edges, sitting on the rug. Just past the coffee table. I stopped walking immediately. My first thought was that someone had broken in, but nothing else was out of place. The door was locked. The windows were shut. No drawers open. No missing items. The box looked old, but clean. Like it had been cared for. There was a faint carved pattern on the lid, not symbols, not letters. Just lines that curved into each other, almost like fingerprints layered over time. I remember laughing quietly and telling myself I must have forgotten it was there. Even though I knew that wasn't true, I didn't open the box that night. I nudged it with my foot, just enough to feel its weight, heavier than it looked, solid. I told myself I'd deal with it in the morning and went to bed. Sleep didn't come easily. Every time I started drifting off, I felt watched. Not in a dramatic way, no panic. Just the uncomfortable sense that something was paying attention to me when I wasn't paying attention back. At some point, I got up to get water. That's when I realized the box had moved. It was closer to the couch. Not by much. Maybe a foot. I stood there, cup in my hand, trying to remember if I'd touched it. I hadn't. I remember thinking, okay, I'm officially overtired. I pushed the box back where it had been, harder this time, until it bumped against the leg of the coffee table. Then I went back to bed and forced myself to sleep. The next day, I called my aunt. She hesitated before answering my questions. Then she said, very casually, "Oh, I dropped something off for you. You weren't home." My stomach tightened. She told me it was a box that had belonged to my grandmother. Something she'd kept hidden in a drawer for years. She always said it wasn't hers to throw away, my aunt said. I thought you might want it. I told her I didn't. She laughed and said, well, you have it now. For a while, nothing happened. I put the box in the hall closet and shut the door. I cleaned the apartment, opened the windows, played music louder than usual. The air felt lighter. I started to relax. That night, I even joked to myself about how ridiculous I'd been. Then I heard the closet door, not opening, just breathing, a slow wooden creak, like pressure being applied from the inside. I didn't move. I stood in the kitchen, staring down the hallway, listening to that sound stretch and stop and start again. When it finally went quiet, I told myself it was the building settling. I told myself a lot of things. But when I checked the closet, the box was gone. It was back in the living room, on the rug, exactly where I'd first seen it. I didn't open it. I grabbed my phone and took pictures instead. I don't know why. Proof, maybe, or fear that if I looked inside, something would look back. That's when I noticed the lid was warm, not hot. Just recently touched. I dropped it. It was hollow, like knocking on a door from the inside. I ran. I didn't even grab my keys. I went straight to my neighbor's apartment and knocked until my knuckles hurt. When the police came later, they didn't say much. No signs of forced entry. No explanation for how the box moved. One officer asked me if I'd been stressed lately. I didn't correct him. I didn't go back to that apartment alone. My aunt came with me the next day. She went quiet when she saw the box. Wouldn't touch it. Wouldn't meet my eyes. She told me my grandmother had kept it after someone else died. A friend. A relative. She wasn't clear. She said it carried things, my aunt whispered. Not ghosts. Feelings. We didn't argue. We wrapped the box in cloth and took it out of the apartment. I don't know where it went after that. I didn't ask. I moved out a month later. Even now, sometimes when my place is quiet, I catch that same old smell. Dust and something sour. And for a moment, I feel like I'm being waited for. Living alone teaches you how vulnerable silence can be. How objects remember things we don't. If you have an experience that still sits quietly in the back of your mind, you're not alone. You can share it with us.